Okay, let's get started again. Welcome, everyone. Sorry about that. Welcome to the web training, Bottom-Up Leadership, Break the Old School Model in your A&E firm and create a relevant and future-focused firm. Excited to present this topic today. And I just want to give you a little bit of background of where this came from. Where did this bottom-up leadership idea come from? For those of you who don't know me, my background is I spent 15 years as helping an architecture firm in the Washington, D.C. area run their back office accounting. And I learned a lot doing that, as well as, in addition to that, I was a Win2 and Deltek partner. I worked with over 1,000 A&E firms over 24 years, helping them implement Deltek. And I learned everything that I know that's in my book, Find the Lost Dollars. I learned from implementing Deltek and just helping companies be successful with it, to understand why they weren't successful with it, and trying to get their employees to use it. And I sold my business in 2014, stopped being a Deltek partner, and created AEC Business Solutions. And for the last 6 years, I have been helping A&E firms to become more profitable. And I work with people, I work with processes, and improving systems, all three of those, to try to help companies increase profitability, improve employee engagement, and helping their employees to become better leaders. And so everything you're going to learn today is from my experience over the last 6 years of training thousands of architecture and engineering professionals. Most of the professionals I work with are engineers, architects, environmental consultants. I work with leaders of firms. I work with project managers and other professionals, regular, technical professionals. And I've actually, in our training courses, have worked with tons of younger millennial, Gen Z technical professionals that are much closer to their years of getting out of college than they are to their retirement. And so everything that I'm going to share with you today is what I have learned about what gets them excited about working at your firm and helping the company to succeed. And I hope you really enjoyed this material today. So what we're going to talk about, we are going to first look at what is bottom-up leadership. I've kind of coined that phrase myself, so it's not something you would find just going out and looking for it on Google. And why even embrace it? What benefit does it have for your firm? I'm going to talk about how do you transition your firm from an old school top-down firm to a bottom-up leadership style of company. And just kind of going through some of the experience that I've had with helping companies make this transition and some of the great benefits that they've gotten out of doing this. And really looking at, where does it add so much value to your firm to become a more relevant, younger, focused company. And then we're going to look at how you can assess your firm's leadership style. So most of you, if you are at least 40 years old, I'll say, and I'm much older than that, but most of you who are at least 40 years old, you probably grew up with top-down leadership. So I want you to think about, especially if it was a long time ago that you were young and you got out of college and you went to go work for your firm, what was it like back then? And it may actually be exactly the same way that it is now. So maybe the leaders made all the decisions. In fact, many of you probably had no idea why they made the decisions they made. That information wasn't shared with you. You were basically told, this is what is going to happen, and not even why it was going to happen, just this is what's going to happen. And employees were never asked for feedback. What do you think of us doing this or that? That would have happened. Financial information was almost never shared. Now that I'll say, out of all of these items, that is the one area that I've seen the most improvement in from most A&E firms over the last 10 years has been additional transparency. But what I find is that the transparency that the leaders perceive and what the employees perceive is two different things. So the leaders came up with all the great business ideas, and the leaders came up with how things were going to work. This is how we're going to do it. That doesn't mean that's how people actually do things, but this is how they were told to do things. And it all came from above, from the top down. Employees were not educated on business or leadership or management until many years into their career. I want you to think back. And you know, if you really think back to those days when you were a young A&E professional and you were trying to understand how your business did what it did, you probably had some great ideas yourself, or some opinions at least, about what should work and not work, but nobody ever asked you, and for the most part, you probably didn't even feel comfortable talking about it. And most importantly, you had to climb the corporate ladder to get anywhere in your firm. There was a structure that was built into your firm that dictated how your firm promoted people, gave salary increases, and you really couldn't get ahead in your firm unless you were willing to climb that corporate ladder. So this is what you grew up, if this is what you grew up with, many of you may find that your firm is exactly the same way as it was all along, that it hasn't changed at all. And if that's the case, you're going to get a lot out of today. If you've overcome all of these things, that it's not like that anymore, then maybe you already are operating with bottom-up leadership. But if you still have any of these things going on, I think you'll be able to see there are a lot of benefits to considering an alternative to that way of running the firm. Now, why do the firms just keep running the same way for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, on and on and on? That's the way we've always done it. You know, maybe the firm's profitable. Maybe the leaders of your firm have made a lot of money and they felt like, hey, there's no reason to change anything. But I don't believe this can continue to go on. Today's younger people have different attitudes and expectations about their role in your firm. And the more that you can embrace alternative approaches, I think you'll see that there are a ton of benefits and your firm could be even more successful and more prosperous. So let's talk about what are the problems with top-down leadership. First of all, and you may see this a lot, with whenever you've tried to implement something new, you've put in a new system, you've tried to clamp down on people to enforce some of your processes and policies like your timesheets and other things like that, you may find that you get very low buy-in and your people resist change. And I do a whole 1-hour presentation on leading organizational change. Change management is a very difficult thing, but I think you'll see bottom-up leadership goes a long, long way towards destroying the resistance. Resistance is a very, very normal reaction from people. Resistance comes from either one, not understanding why you're asking them to do something, or two, thinking that it's a bad idea. And unless you understand where that resistance is coming from and you deal with it, you're going to continue to have problems with employees adopting your processes and systems and complying with your policies and procedures. And you are going to suffer a lot of consequences from that. You're going to see lower profitability. You're going to see frustration across the board. And this impacts everything. It impacts your quality control, your safety. Think about if you are trying to get your employees to come back to your office after COVID-19. If everyone refuses to comply with the processes that you put in place, then you could have a lot of problems. You might have health problems, and you might have morale problems. So complying with processes and systems and getting employees to do that isn't that hard with a bottom-up approach. But top-down leadership, it almost ensures that people are not going to do what you ask them to do. You're also missing out. You know, your employees, the kids today, are smart and they are technologically savvy. They read a lot. They are tuned into what's going on in the world, and they have lots of good ideas. And what I find is most firms are not really good at mining the capabilities of their staff. And I'm going to give you a really, really cool example later of a situation like this from a young engineer that was able to help transform his company. And I see it every single day with the firms that I work with, the clients that I work with. Once they've empowered their employees using the techniques of bottom-up leadership that I'm going to teach you later, they find that their employees have a wealth of ideas about how to run the business better. And those ideas are not ideas necessarily that the older leaders are going to come up with, because they see things from a different perspective. The problems with top-down leadership is really that nobody in your firm really understands why they're supposed to do something. And that's what causes a lot of the resistance and a lot of the failure to adopt your processes and systems. So they, not understanding the why behind it, they're going to come up with their own ideas about whether it's a good or bad idea. And in many cases, they believe it's a bad idea and that it doesn't make sense. You are going to have lower employee engagement and higher turnover with using a top-down leadership. Today's employees just aren't willing to climb the corporate ladder. They want to be recognized for their skills and talents at the appropriate time. You might have some employees, after 3 years, they're ready to manage a project, and you might have others that are never ready to manage a project. But what has happened over the years using the top-down leadership approach is that everybody that hits an 8 or 10-year mark is expected to be a PM. Many of them are talented, many of them are not talented, and you end up with a wide pool of very different levels of talent in your project managers, and some of them are losing a lot of money for you, and usually the talented ones are making up for that. So across the board, it may not look so bad, but on an individual level, it's a problem. And ultimately, all of these issues are going to cause you to leak profits. Because people aren't adopting processes and systems, whether it's your timesheet policies, managing projects, updating budgets, approving timesheets, collection calls, and all of the other things that you expect your employees to do, getting change orders for extra services. All of those things require employees to follow processes and use systems appropriately. And if they don't understand why they should do it, they don't have buy-in, they have a lot of resistance, they think their way is a better way to do it, you are going to leak profits. You're not going to maximize the amount of profit that you potentially could be making. And so I believe that today I'm going to show you lots of ways to change that. I want to talk for a couple minutes about what today's younger employees do think. You know, they've been bashed a lot in the A&E industry. I go to industry events and I constantly hear, you know, the millennials this and the millennials that. They don't like to work hard. They just want time off. They don't, they're not engaged. A lot of that is because of the leadership style of the firms that they work for. And so bottom-up leadership is going to create a different level of engagement and buy-in with your employees. It's going to help them feel like they actually work in a business, not just a nonprofit organization. See, they don't think like an owner. And so the goal here is to help get them to think like an owner. But how do they think? You may be shocked to see some of the surprising things that I found when I started doing a lot of research. So first of all, a Deloitte study found that there is a skepticism or a negativity about the way that millennials and the Gen Zers, the kids just getting out of college in the early 20s and mid 20s, how they look at business. And they don't look at business the way that we looked at business when we graduated from college and started working in the corporate world. So they believe there should be less focus on profit, on producing and selling goods and services, and in driving efficiency and finding better ways of doing things. Now, does that make any sense to any of you? When you look at that, you think, holy moly, how are we ever going to get these people to do the right things if this is what they think? Should we not even talk to them about profit anymore? Interestingly, I was at an industry event. You remember what those are? A couple years ago. And I was sitting at a table at lunch talking to a CFO of a couple hundred-person engineering firm. And he said, you know, we've moved away from talking about profit in our firm because the younger people don't want to hear about profit. They don't want to talk about profit. They want to talk about saving the world and climate change and being an environmentally friendly firm. And I said to him, who's going to pay for that? How do you pay for all of those things if you don't make a profit? So the problem isn't making a profit or talking about profit. The problem is not connecting the goals of the organization and the goals of your employees to the profit. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a couple minutes. Well, what do they want more focus on? I just mentioned they want more focus on generating jobs, climate change, the environment, diversity and inclusion, which is huge, and even what's been going on in the last few months. Most companies have had to really step up their game in this area and realize that they're not talking enough about these things. And innovation. Most of your younger employees are fairly tech savvy. They don't want old school ways of doing things. They don't want lots of paper. They don't want things to be done the way they were 10 years ago. They want their firm to embrace technology, to innovate, and to do things in a more effective way based on utilizing the newer technology that's coming out. And also, if you think about it, I believe one of the things that really, really drives the millennials and the younger people today is that they see all these startups coming out of California. You know, they kind of compare where they are to what happens in the tech industry. And startups are kind of cool. You know, like I was talking to someone the other day and they're like, yeah, our goal, we have this tech startup and our goal is to make $1 billion in the next 3 years. Okay, so when's the last time you heard an engineering firm say, we're going to make $1 billion? You know, maybe if you're one of the top 10 in the E&R, you're talking about billions of dollars, but the average A&E firm that's probably average in the country, is probably a 70-person firm, is not talking about billions of dollars. They're talking about millions of dollars. And it's a slow pace of growth. Now, maybe over the last few years, you've grown substantially, but not like a startup. It's not the same idea. The whole idea of a startup is you're going to come up with a great idea, you're going to capitalize on it, you're going to make a ton of money. This is how they think. So if you think about what's going on in their heads, what maybe they may be thinking is, you know, maybe I should be starting up my own business. Maybe if I started my own business, I could leverage all these great ideas that I have and not be so old school and have a much more successful firm, right? Now, that's not a lot of reality in thinking that way, because they really don't understand business. And that is actually my next point. Most of your employees, including probably yourself and everyone that works in your firm, went from college into business, but really don't understand business, what business is all about. Most professionals are focused on the technical aspects of their work. What they learned in college was how to be a great architect or engineer or environmental scientist or a geotech. They learned about the technology and the technical skills of that trade, but it was never discussed in college that you are actually going to get out of college and go work for a business in which you're going to be expected to be highly utilized and make money and earn the company a profit so that they can even stay in business, right? So there's not even a minimal understanding of business when you first get out of college. Many of you who do understand business these days understand it because either you're not an A&E professional, maybe you're a accounting professional like I am. I'm a CPA. I went through college learning about business, but I had to learn about architecture and engineering and environmental consulting. I had to learn that. It took many, many years before I became great at that. The reverse is true. If you're any technical professional, you had to learn business. Many of you learned in the School of Hard Knocks. I will tell you that is not a great university to learn business in. The School of Hard Knocks is expensive, it's painful, and it's wrought with errors. So let's talk about bottom-up leadership. What does it really look like? First of all, bottom-up leadership. Your employees are included in your business decisions. What does that look like? Well, it means that you expect your employees to have good ideas. They work in the business every day. They have ideas about what's working and not working. Why not get them to help you make some of those key decisions? Just think about it. If you had been asked for your opinion when you were 26 years old, you probably would have had some good ideas, and you would have felt really respected and recognized if the leaders of your firm had asked for those opinions. And asked for your help, by the way. They don't mind helping with solving some of the problems in the company. Next, when I've seen this, and I'm going to, hopefully be able to give you some ideas of how this actually works in the real world, but employees will actually help you implement new processes if you give them the opportunity to get involved in that. This is what I do every day. Our Find the Lost Dollars training program basically takes employees who know nothing about business or little about business, trains them on finance and business management, and then puts them through a process of having them work through how to help the company improve some of the key process issues that they've identified during the 10-week program that we have. And what we have found is not only do initiatives get implemented much faster and more effectively, but the employees have a tremendous amount of buy-in towards implementing those processes. For example, I have clients that have had really low buy-in for their Deltek Vision system. They couldn't get their PMs to use resource planning. They couldn't get anybody to use CRM. And after going through our program and helping the company reinvent how they were going to use the system and work through the processes, they all of a sudden were highly motivated and even excited to use some of those modules. So if that's something you've struggled with, this bottom-up leadership can make a huge difference for you. So in bottom-up leadership, you are consistently asking your employees for feedback. What are we doing well? What could we be doing better? You know, most firms have gotten pretty good at asking employees about employee engagement topics and HR topics. Do you feel you're being paid well? Are you engaged in the company? You know, how about your benefits? Most firms are doing a pretty good job with their HR, getting HR feedback. But almost never are firms getting decent feedback about how they're running the business. And if you think about it, the employees are doing their day-to-day jobs and they may be struggling in certain areas because something's not efficient or they don't understand it, or maybe every office does things their own way, so they get kind of lost sometimes. There's no like one way to do something. And so they don't really ever have a chance to tell anyone what they think about that and how the company could be better. And your employees want to tell you how you can run the firm better. They do. They really want to tell you that. And so asking for feedback is very important. We have an automated business management assessment survey that in less than a week, you can get a tremendous amount of data about how your employees feel, about how you're running the business at a very detailed level. And we analyze 9 areas of the business and really break it down into tremendous amount of data. It's a fast way to get information quickly that you can put to use right away so that you can understand where you need to focus your attention. Bottom-up leadership means you're going to educate your employees on business and finance early in their career. Not after 7 or 8 years. It's time for them to become a PM. Sometimes I work with firms and they have people who have already been a PM for 10 years and still have never had any real true business training. And it really does impact them. There are areas where they just are lost. They get the reports from your system, project reports, and they really don't even understand all the terminology, where the data came from, how a lot of the numbers were calculated. Some of it just goes right over their heads. But they're often embarrassed or ashamed to tell you that they don't understand that. And it's unfortunate because it's really not a huge obstacle to overcome. In a bottom-up leadership, you are openly sharing financial information. Some firms really struggle with this. How much information to share? Should we share cost data? You know, every firm has to really look inside and see what they feel comfortable doing. I often work with firms that are employee-owned, and I find that employee-owned firms tend to share more information just because that's the type of culture that they're trying to create in the firm. But sharing financial information actually creates a lot more loyalty and engagement. And instead of the employees guessing about how the firm is doing or guessing about where the profits are going, by sharing that information, you can get them to be a lot more engaged and excited about working at your firm. And finally, bottom-up leadership means that you are embracing a culture of continuous improvement and accountability. that's really actually a core component of sharing your financial information is accountability. If you just share financial information and there's no accountability, then it's kind of useless. Sharing financial information needs to go hand in hand with rewards, incentives, and consequences, regular reviews of the financial data, and incentivizing people to perform at a certain level. And if it's done in a really, really positive way, it's remarkable how much it can motivate employees, way more than, say, a situation where you have discretionary bonuses and everything's done behind closed doors. Then they may feel that things aren't being done as fairly as possible. And so creating this culture where we're looking for lost dollars, we need to be as profitable as we can in order to help the company to be strong and survive, and be accountable. It's really exciting for your employees to operate in this environment. So what are the benefits of bottom-up leadership? High buy-in for new changes. Many of you, if you're using Deltek, you're going to be putting Vantage Point in the next couple years. You want your employees to be excited about it, right? You want them to adopt your processes and use your systems with enthusiasm. You want to get their great ideas from them and leverage and mine those ideas. You want them to understand the why, because if they understand the why, they are going to resist so much less anything that you ask them to do. Your employees are going to be way more engaged, and you're going to increase retention, and your employees will embrace change at a different level. They're not going to hate change quite as much. I think you'll see that they are more excited about the kinds of changes that you could possibly be making in your company. So I want to tell you a little story. This story is about a young engineer named Paul. Paul is actually my neighbor, and Paul graduated from Villanova a little over 2 years ago with a degree in mechanical engineering. Paul had an offer before he even graduated, as you can imagine, and he went to work for a manufacturing company. He actually did not go into the design and construction industry. He went to work for a manufacturer. It's actually a company that makes big glass windows for office buildings. And this is a key thing I'm going to say right now. Day one that Paul started at his new company, he was put into a management training program. This is something that almost no A&E firms do. I think it's brilliant. Day one, Paul was treated as somebody who was going to be a future leader of that company, with the idea that as a future leader, you need to understand everything about the company. You need to understand the manufacturing process, the accounting and finance processes, the management side of things. So Paul was put into this management training program, and as a result of that, he was moved around like 4 times in the last 2 years to 4 different parts of the company. Very early on in the first year that Paul worked there, he spent the first few months in the management training, kind of, learning about how the business operates. And then the next 3 or 4 months, he was sent to one of their manufacturing plants to learn the manufacturing process. And about a month into that, I get an email from his mom, Pat, who is my friend. And Pat emailed me and said, "Hey, June, I know you help companies with their business processes. I wanted to ask you a question. Paul has, been at this manufacturing plant now for about a month or so, and he's made a list of the following 20 things that he thinks are causing his company to lose a lot of money. They have horrible quality control. There's a lot of errors and mistakes being made. People aren't always doing what they're supposed to do. And he really is concerned about this. What do you think Paul should do? Is this something you can help us with?" And I looked at the list. There was actually a list there of 20 things. And I wrote back to Pat and I said, I'm not going to help you, but Paul can help his company quite a bit. I recommend he put together a very nice message to the CEO of the company with all of his recommendations and send them to the CEO of the company and say, I think you're losing a lot of money and you have quality issues that could cause other serious problems. And I really want to help the company to be more successful. He sent that off to the CEO and immediately got promoted 6 months or 5 months, I don't know how many, into his new job. So think about how many Pauls you may have in your firm that have some of these ideas but don't feel empowered to tell you about it. And Paul is still with the company now 2.5 years later, and he's thriving there. So how do you implement this bottom-up leadership? This is what I do every day, and so I try to put together a list of kind of best practices for how to put a new program in place within your company to kind of transform. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, and you are going to have some resistance probably from your leadership team, right? Because the way we've always done it is a way of operating for many people. And if you have people that are close to retirement, maybe they don't see the benefit of changing. But hopefully these best practices will help you implement bottom-up leadership. So first of all, you need to be really strong in communicating your mission, vision, and values. And the reason for this, we talked about earlier how the younger people in your firm want to save the world and probably don't understand what your real true vision for your company is and your true mission. And if they do understand, they should be able to tell you. So if you walk up to someone in your firm and say, do you know what our mission is? And do you know what our company values are? They should be able to tell you. If they can't tell you, then they can't tell your client. And that is a really important thing to think about. Your values should be driving everyone's behavior. Your values should be driving what clients you work with, which projects you decide to pursue, what people you decide to hire or retain. Your values are the core of your existence. You don't want to have employees that don't share your values. You don't want to have clients that don't share your values. So having strong values is very, very important, and it helps keep your employees aligned with your company and feeling like they're part of something. The next thing is to tie your mission. You know, we want to be the best engineering firm in North America, helping build the infrastructure of our country and making our country a better place to live. Okay, how do you do that? You do that by being a successful company. And only companies that are highly profitable can give back. Only companies that are highly profitable can give back to the community, can donate money, can offer community service. All of those things that you want to offer and want to be about require profit. If you're talking about one side of this equation and not the profit side, you're missing the boat. Profit is a great thing. And if you're not talking about profit, then your employees are going to think it's a bad thing. We want them to believe that it's a good thing. That's how they get to think like an owner. That's how they get to be a leader in your company, is to understand the connection between what it takes to give back and have a strong mission in your firm and be a profitable company. They've got to get that. If they don't get that connection, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle with them all the time about money. And you don't want that to happen. You want them to embrace the idea that being profitable is a great thing. Also, letting them know what's in it for them is very important. Next, you need to have an aligned leadership team, that your leadership team agrees on the goals of the organization and the process for allocating resources to those goals. Very often I come into firms and there is not an alignment of their leadership team. And when I see that, typically I see a company that has low accountability. I see a company that has very inconsistent processes and systems across the organization where they're allowing their employees all to do things their own way. I see a company that has silos. Very often this happens because of acquisitions or fast growth in which the culture of the company has not been well integrated across the organization. So if you feel like this is a problem in your company, my recommendation is to focus on your leadership team and get everybody on the same page. Very often when I run our Find the Lost Dollars training groups, I start off with the leadership team of the company first, before we even start to try to tackle group leaders and project managers. We work first with the E team, the management team of the company, and get everybody on the same page. And what I find is after that first group of leaders has had the opportunity to really sit and focus from a business standpoint on what's important, they're operating at a much more level of alignment that enables them to move forward in implementing some of the other changes that need to happen. The next thing to look at is, what is your focus? I want you to go look at your About Us page on your website. What is it that you tell people you're about? Who are you? Are you professional, high quality, reliable, smart, professional? We have great relationships. We're dependable. We're innovative. We're experts. Whatever it is that you're selling yourself for, one thing you also need to say is you're great business people, right? Your clients actually want you to be great business people, because when you're great business people, you're going to run their projects better. When your project managers and group leaders are great business people, you're going to run your clients' projects better, not just to benefit your own firm, but to benefit your clients' budgets and schedules. And so if you think about what you talk about every day, that ends up being what your culture is. Most firms are talking about quality, keeping clients happy, and getting new work. And what ends up happening is, yes, you need to get new work, but do you want crappy work or do you want great new work? Is quality at any price, or is there a certain level of quality that your client needs to expect they're going to pay for? And when you're going to keep your clients happy at all costs, or are you going to keep your clients happy by delivering high quality work at a fair price, at a reasonable price, not at a discount or at a commodity pricing point? So think about what your focus is. What do you talk about? Talking about business, talking about finances and profitability is a good thing. It's a good thing to do with your employees and your clients. So focusing on business success is key. It really, really is key. So earlier we talked about feedback. I mentioned that we have a business management assessment survey. It gives you your results in 9 areas of the business, from sales and proposals, through estimating, project management, managing scope creep, invoicing and cash flow, timesheets, IT services, client relationships, and resource scheduling. All of those things are going on in your firm every day. And you may believe that you've addressed a lot of the issues that you have around making sure those things are being run effectively. But your employees actually, as I said, have great ideas. They know where the bottlenecks are. They know what's slowing them down from getting their work done effectively, and they want to tell you. And in our business management assessment, we have a place to provide comments and feedback in their own words. you should see some of the stuff employees write in there. Things like, oh, we have a CRM system. And this is coming from like project managers. They say things like, well, if there is something like accountability, it doesn't exist in our firm. Wow. You know, wouldn't you like to know these are the kinds of things your employees are thinking? When you get feedback that says things like 80% of your project managers don't know if you have a change order process, or they don't know how it works, that's an issue. No wonder you've got, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars of write-offs every year in scope creep. Those are the things that are driving your business success, and your employees can help you identify those areas where you can be much, much better. So get feedback from your employees. The next thing is to give feedback. You know, the younger millennials, they grew up with we always joke about how they grew up with a trophy, you know, for participation. And I'm not telling you to just give them positive feedback all the time over nothing. But when they do things that are helpful, valuable, resourceful, give them positive feedback. Give them negative feedback if they need to have it, constructive feedback. They want way, way, way more feedback than you are giving them right now. If they had it their own way, you would give them feedback daily. Now, if you think about, I was thinking about this the other day because I got a new puppy during this COVID crisis. You know, now's the right time to get a puppy because I'm not traveling anymore. And I was thinking about it. You give your employees feedback, or you give your puppies feedback every 2 minutes, right? Yes, no, do this, sit, whatever. And you give them treats when they do the right thing. Your employees probably go months without any feedback. And they need the feedback. They need it. They need to know what they're doing right, what they're not doing well, where they can be better. This is going to help drive not only their motivation, but it's going to make them better at what they do. And so give your employees feedback often. And you'll see that they respond very well to that. And this is one of my favorite Steve Jobs quotes. Steve Jobs, a small team of A+ players can run circles around a giant team of B and C players. I want you to think about, do you have B and C players on your team? And can the C players become B players? And can the B players become A or A+ players? And I will tell you, working with thousands of firms over the last 30 years, one of the keys to getting people at the next level of behavior, and especially your PMs and up and your leadership, is to give them a strong level of business acumen. And it will have such an amazing impact on everything in your company and your profitability. And you know what? Many of my clients tell me that when they train one level of leaders in their firm, whether it's project group leaders or project managers, a lot of those good behaviors and good ideas trickle down to the lower level staff. So things like, oh, we're going to do our timesheets every day religiously, which will, I promise you, most firms that do their timesheets every day can increase their profits anywhere from 3 to 10% per year pretty quickly. So, and cash flow. So giving your employees the business acumen to understand the why you do things the way you do them. What are the best practices behind running a successful A&E firm? And transparently sharing and listening and getting feedback from them in that process is going to drive a whole new level of behavior from your employees, motivation. One of the things that I see after they've gone through our program is a whole new renewed level of interest in their ERP system, whether it's Delta Vision or a Jira, Clearview, BST, Microsoft. It doesn't really matter. They are more motivated to use the system because they now get it. It completely changes their paradigm about why you ask them to do things. The next is transparency. This might be one of the things that many of you are doing better than others. There's still usually some areas of improvement. It's interesting because when I get a group of employees together, very often the leaders will say, oh yeah, we're pretty transparent, we're sharing everything. And then we'll have other employees pipe in and say, well, not really. There are some other things I'm not getting that I really need. And that opens up a really amazing level of dialogue between the different groups and the leadership team to really understand what information people really need to do their jobs correctly and properly. And they probably need a little bit more information than what you're sharing. They might need a lot more information than what you're sharing. You may be crippling them in their job and not able to really truly manage projects effectively without getting the information, either the right information or the information on a timely basis. So transparency is very important. The next thing about continuous improvement for bottom-up leadership is that continuous improvement involves people, processes, and systems. All three of those things need to work in sync. They need to be all be upped. The level of use needs to be upped quite a bit in most firms. So it might be your people that are the biggest issue, but sometimes your people, they're just not functioning well because your processes are terrible, or your systems are either not being used effectively, or they weren't set up right to begin with, or your employees have never been trained correctly on how to use them. And I see employees all the time that reject the system because maybe something failed a long time ago. Like, let's say you tried to put in a CRM system, or you tried to implement a resource planning solution and it didn't go so well. And what happens is they just get a bad taste in their mouth and they start joking. And there's all this kind of passive aggressive behavior. Continuous improvement means you set an expectation with your employees that you are going to continue to improve. And it's a culture. It's a way of operating your company where everyone expects that your technology is going to continue to keep getting better. You're going to invest in technology. You're going to keep improving processes and enforcing use of them, holding people accountable. And your people are going to get the training and attention that they need in order to do their best possible job for your organization. And this, going into a level of uncertainty that we have in the coming year or two with the economy, not really knowing what is going to happen, this is a really great time to fine-tune or even massively overhaul a lot of what you're doing to make sure that your company is stronger and much better well-positioned to deal with anything that can happen in the future. The next thing is accountability. Accountability means you have set goals, you are constantly producing numbers and reports, and you're reviewing them with your people, and you are holding people accountable. I want you to think about baseball for a minute. Baseball is one of my favorite sports. I'm a huge Washington Nationals world champion Washington Nationals fan. I'm so excited. We're going to have our first real game tomorrow. And think about baseball from a level of accountability. Think of all the stats. Every single pitch is measured. The speed of the pitch. Is it inside or outside? What kind of pitch was it? Every single at-bat is measured. Every player has a detailed stats that they have to be monitored against. And guess what? Guess what happens to the pitcher if they're not playing a good game? They get yanked out. That is true accountability. Those players aren't complaining about that. They know that's the way the game is run. And I'm not saying you have to run your firm like a baseball game, but the more you measure everything that's happening and make it part of your culture to review that data and those numbers on a regular basis, you're going to see a different level of attention and purpose and accountability that exists with your people. And you know, if you think about becoming a championship architecture or engineering or environmental firm, this is what it takes. It takes this level of accountability. I just want to make one other additional point before we wrap up. High profits and happy employees go together. When you have high profits, you have the ability to offer everything your employees ever wanted or needed to make them happy. And when you have truly happy employees, you're going to have a more profitable firm because they're going to be excited to work there and delivering better projects for your clients and have a better attitude. Those two things go together. You cannot have one without the other, and focusing on them is very, very important. So I'm just going to wrap up by saying, why do we do what we do? If you are thinking about implementing bottom-up leadership and you're not really sure how to do any of this, I'm happy to jump on a call with you and help you plan out how to do this. The reasons our clients call us is either they're not hitting their profit goals, they want to implement a training program with their PMs and leaders to try to get everybody at a higher level of business acumen, they want help improving processes and systems, and they want to bring a better level of consistency and accountability to their firm. And very often we work with leaders who are younger, newer leaders who, you know, see that things were done the old way and the old school way of running the firm, and they want to make an impact on the company and modernize the firm. And this is a great way to do it. Bottom-up leadership is definitely the key. And if you want some help or need some help, we're happy to talk with you about it and see if it makes sense to work with you on that. And lastly, I am starting a new case study group next month, taking on a few new clients. We are going to transform your company to get your employees to think like owners. We're going to help you implement the bottom-up leadership, transform your culture, and help you increase your project profit margins dramatically. If you're interested, email me. We'll see if it's a good fit for you. And I hope this has been an extremely valuable hour that you've spent with me. I will be sending out copies of the slides and a link to the recording in an email, probably later today or maybe first thing tomorrow morning. If you don't get it, reach out to me at jjewel@aecbusiness.com. Sometimes these emails get stuck in your spam folder. And so you will be getting that. I really look forward to hearing back from many of you. If you have some feedback for this web training, please send me an email. I'm really excited to hear about what you think about it, even if it's constructive, negative feedback. I want to hear all of it. I need to know how to make everything that I do better than what I'm doing. And